Dubrow Suspicion Files.
All right, today we are diving into one of the biggest, most jaw-dropping scandals in the history of music. It's the story of Milli Vanilli, right? These two guys who became the biggest pop stars on the entire planet. And how the whole thing was built on this spectacular lie. A lie that led to one of the most devastating falls from grace you will ever see. I mean, just look at this timeline. It says it all. February 1990, Rob and Fab, they're on top of the world. They're holding a Grammy for Best New Artist, music's highest honor. Then, flash forward to November, not even a full year later. They're not just yesterday's news. They are branded as total frauds. And their Grammy? It's revoked, stripped away in this insane, historic act of public humiliation. First time ever. So, how? How did it all go so wrong, so unbelievably fast? The speed is just breathtaking. But here's the thing. It wasn't some sudden implosion. No, this was a ticking time bomb. And to really get what happened, we've got to go back to the exact moment that fuse was lit. Now, the real beginning of the end, it didn't happen in some stuffy boardroom or a dramatic press conference. No. It happened 16 months before the fall. Live. On a stage in front of thousands of screaming fans and, crucially, a massive MTV broadcast audience. Okay, so picture this. It's July 1989. Milli Vanilli are in the middle of performing their monster hit, Girl You Know It's True. And then, disaster. The backing track jams. It starts skipping like a broken record, repeating the same line over and over and over. Girl, you know it's, girl, you know it's, girl, you know it's. The one word that never comes? True. The single most important word in their entire career. And it just vanishes. For Rob Pilatus, this was it. This was the nightmare scenario he'd probably been having for months. The fraud, the whole scheme, exposed, live on television. You can just imagine the cold sweat, the pounding heart. He was absolutely certain in that one moment that it was all over. So what did he do? He panicked. I mean, he literally ran off the stage, just bolted into the wings. But then something crazy happens. MTV's own VJ, Downtown Julie Brown, she sees this and is not having it. She refuses to let the show die. She chases him down, yells at him, and then physically pushes him back out on stage. It's a wild moment, but it tells you something really important. The machine, the industry, was not about to let its shiny new product fail so easily. And this is where we get to maybe the most terrifying lesson of that whole night. Because after they restart the track and they finish the show, Rob and Fab look out at the audience and realize something absolutely horrifying. The crowd, they just kept cheering. They either didn't notice the glitch or they just didn't care. The illusion, the show, that was more important than the truth. Okay, so why were they so terrified? Why were they lip-syncing in the first place, right? To answer that, we got to rewind the clock just one more year. We're going to a studio in Munich, Germany, to the moment they made the fateful deal that started this whole mess. So before all the fame, before Milli Vanilli, this was the reality. Rob Pilatus, a struggling model. Fab Morvan, a dancer. And so broke that he was, at times, actually homeless, living in a Munich train station. They had basically nothing, except for this burning ambition and a desperate, desperate desire to be stars. And then enter Frank Farian, a producer with a very specific kind of genius. You see, he wasn't just a producer, he was a manufacturer. And he'd done this exact thing before with the huge 70s disco group Boney M. He actually sang the deep male vocals himself and then hired this charismatic dancer to be the public face of the group. It was his formula, and it worked. Create the music, then hire the good-looking packaging. And Farian's formula was about to collide with its greatest enabler ever, MTV. The rise of the music video created this perfect storm, a world where style was starting to matter more than substance. The look, the hair, the dance moves, the charisma, that's what was selling records. And Farian, well, he was just building the perfect product for this new machine. So Farian finds Rob and Fab, and they are perfect. The look, the moves, everything. He plays them the demo for Girl You Know It's True. They absolutely love it. He apparently lets them try to sing, but, quickly decides their voices just aren't good enough. And then comes the offer. It's basically, you guys will be the stars. You'll get the fame, the money, the dream, but you will not sing a single note. And you got to remember, they were young, they were broke, They were desperate. Of course they said yes. And that one yes, well, it didn't just lead to a hit song. It unleashed a global phenomenon. A lie so massive, it took an entire machine, a conspiracy really, just to keep it going. I mean, the scale of their success was just staggering. Their debut album sold 7 million copies, and that's just in the US alone. Let that sink in for a second. That's not just a hit album. That's a full-on cultural tidal wave. And it wasn't just the album sales either. They had 3 different singles from that one album go all the way to #1 on the Billboard charts. 3 of them. You literally couldn't turn on the radio without hearing them. For a moment there, they were the sound of pop music. But of course, it wasn't their sound. Behind the scenes, there was a whole group of incredibly talented, but totally unknown session singers who laid down all the actual vocals. These were the real voices, the ghosts in the machine. Can you imagine? Watching from the shadows as 2 dancers become global superstars using your voice. And you better believe the machine fiercely protected its investment. At one point, one of the real singers, a guy named Charles Shaw, tried to blow the whistle and tell the press the truth. The producer, Farian, didn't just deny it. He reportedly paid Shaw $150,000 in hush money to shut up, retract his story, and keep the lie going. And this is how the lie went from a secret to an official printed fact. Their American record label, Arista Records, didn't just release the music. They put the lie in writing, right there on millions of album covers, explicitly crediting Rob and Fab for the vocals. A former employee even admitted later, "Oh yeah, we all knew." The label was in on it. But see, when a lie gets that big, when the machine is that successful, and then the industry itself validates the whole thing with its highest award, well, something's gotta break. Winning that Grammy, it didn't secure the lie, oh no. It's the very thing that made the collapse totally inevitable. Just a month after they win the Grammy, Rob Pilatus gives this now infamous interview to Time magazine, and people read it and just thought he was the most arrogant guy on the planet. But if you look closer, it's something else. It's not just arrogance, it's this desperate psychological attempt to will the lie into being true. Think about it. If you faked your way to the very top, you have 2 choices: confess or try to become the person everyone already thinks you are. Rob was trying to become Elvis. And this right here was the real turning point. The puppets decided they wanted to be real boys. Emboldened by that Grammy win, but also totally suffocating under the weight of the lie, Rob and Fab went to their creator, Frank Farian. And they made a demand that the whole machine just could not handle. They insisted on singing for real on the next album. And you can just see the collision course they were on, right? For Rob and Fab, this was their one chance for redemption, a way to finally become real artists. But for Farian, this was mutiny. He actually called it blackmail. He knew that letting the world hear their real voices would completely destroy the multi-million-dollar brand he had so carefully built. So Farian was basically cornered by his own creation, and he decided to choose the nuclear option, mutually assured destruction. On November 14th, 1990, he called a press conference. He didn't wait to get exposed. He pulled the trigger himself, announcing to the world that not only had he fired Rob and Fab, but that they had never ever sung a single note. That one confession, it set off this immediate and just brutal chain reaction. It didn't just end a pop phenomenon. It destroyed 2 lives, and it left behind a question that honestly still kind of haunts the music industry to this day. Just a few days later, it was Rob and Fab's turn. They had to face this massive horde of angry reporters at their own press conference. And they were just broken. There was no fight left in them, only confession. And that's when Rob delivered this unforgettable line, which really became their epitaph. And here's maybe the cruelest irony in this whole story. In 1992, they finally got what they'd demanded. They released an album under the name Rob and Fab, using their own real voices. Now, the world had spent the last couple of years screaming for authenticity, right? And when these guys finally delivered it, the album sold about 2,000 copies. Total flop. Turns out, the world didn't actually want the truth. It just wanted to punish the lie. Now, Fab Morvan, he eventually found his footing, and he continues to make music today. But Rob never escaped. He spiraled into addiction, into crime. And then, In one final tragic twist of fate, just as Frank Farian, of all people, was producing a comeback album that would finally feature Rob's real voice, Rob was found dead of an accidental overdose. He was only 33. He died still trapped by the lie. So, at the end of all this, we're left with a big question. Who was the real fraud here? Were Rob and Fab the villains, or were they just the disposable pretty faces on a product that was created by a cynical producer, pushed by a complicit record label, and then eaten up by an audience that, let's be honest, seemed to care more about the fantasy than the truth? It really makes you wonder who truly sold their soul to the devil in this story.